Hi, it's Cheryl back with you from Farmhouse Frugally. Happy 4th of July. If you're new, here on this channel you will see mini crafts, furniture flips, dump hauls, and trash to treasures. Today I have a number of thrift flips or trash to treasures for you. These first two are a pair. This set of candle holders came from the dump, and somebody paid $8 a piece for them, and something was up with the top. I don't know if they peeled something off or whatever of one of them, but that's okay. I cleaned them really well and took out my black chalked paint. I did like them in black, but they needed a good refreshing, so I went ahead and just gave them one good coat of that black chalked paint. Then, once that is dry, I am going to wet distress them and give them some of the antiquing wax where the distressing is, to just pull that out and make that look a little bit more primitive country, I guess you would say in this particular case, at least farmhouse country. So then I wanted to do two different things with these rather than make them a pair. And I had this piece of wood from the dump also, which was already just a cut piece of wood. So I took some of the watered down antiquing wax and I just went ahead and brushed that on and wiped that off to give it more of a stained look. And then once I was done with that block of wood, I also wanted to do something unusual or different with the other one. And so I was looking around to see what I had. And you may remember last week I got a beautiful load of baskets, 15 baskets for $15. And this was one of them, which I thought actually looked pretty nice with this, but needed to give it a little bit of a darkening to make it a little bit more antique-y and not quite so red and green, I think, are the colors on the front of that. So I gave it a good cleaning, and then once it was dry, I just went ahead and brushed over it with a foam brush the antique wax in warm water, which makes kind of that stain. And I did the entire basket inside and out because I wasn't quite sure what I was going to be doing with it. Now here is where I am going to wet distress the paint that has dried to pull off some of that paint here and there to make that look like it is down to the wood in a few spaces, which I like the distressing, but also if you are going to be using that antiquing wax, I kind of like the contrast. So the brown antiquing wax richens up the black paint, but it also gives you some contrast in the places that you have distressed. You can certainly skip the distress step if you happen to want to redo a pair of candlesticks. If you don't like the distressing, you can certainly skip it, or you can always brush with a dry brush, white paint. But if you're using a chalk paint, I do recommend finishing it over either with a polyurethane or a wax to protect the finish. And then once that is completely waxed with I just use a rag here, put the wax on. This is the straight wax, not the wax that has been put in warm water as a stain. I like it. You can put a lighter on it, but I actually like using the direct out of the bottle antiquing wax. And then once I have that on, you can brush it on or you could put it on with the rag. And then I like to just take a dry paper towel or a dry rag and just kind of rub over that until that gets the wax nice and in the creases, and then just let that dry. Now, once that's completely dry, I just took my glue gun, and on the bottom of this basket, you can see how hot that glue gun is. I went ahead and just pushed down and waited until that basket had adhered to the top of the candlestick. Now, this is not a permanent hold, so obviously in 6 months or a year, if I want to just pull that off, I can and do something else with this. But for now, that is what I wanted to do with that. And then I did the same thing with the block of wood. And here is the basket. I absolutely love the way that this came out. I love it with some of the other items that I have here on this display, but I also thought it was adorable in the bathroom with some bath products. And so that is really a pleasant surprise, I think, the way that that ended up coming out. And then back to the other one, I think it needed a little something else. And I had these little glass square vases left over from the baby shower. So I decided to just take a furniture knob and give that a coat of black paint to match the base that I had just painted on the other one. And then once that is dry, I did take a wet napkin or baby wipe here and just wiped back a little bit of the black paint so some of that wonderful rich brown wood could come through, and then just put that right on top of the square. And I thought it was fun that I had one that was square, because often we see these cloches and they're, round, and I love it with the clock underneath. So that, I believe, is going to be a keeper for me. This pair, I just think, came out really, really cute. I love the way they look with the other items that I have here. So I think I'll be holding on to these two, at least for a little while. Now, 3, 4, and 5, I am using a new bird stamp, and I thought it would be fun to show you 3 different ways to use the same stamp. I purchased this on Amazon for, I think, about $6. If I remember, I will put the link in the description so that you also can get it. And I had seen something similar on Pinterest for this first one, and that was kind of my inspiration. I already had this white picture frame from the dump. I cleaned it up. I didn't even bother to repaint it because I wanted it to be in white anyway, and it looked pretty decent. So I cleaned the glass and pulled off the back, and then I went ahead and pulled the glass right out because I wanted to Mod Podge this musical note tissue paper directly onto the glass, and I don't want those rough edges showing, so I just went ahead and applied a kind of thin coat. You don't need much. This is a very thin tissue paper of the Mod Podge right onto the glass. And then once I pressed that down, most of the wrinkles came out, but honestly, I really don't care if it has wrinkles or not. I kind of like that look. And then once this piece was done, I just went ahead and tore the edges off around the glass, because again, you're not going to see it in the frame. It didn't have to be perfect. I could have sanded it, I could have cut it, but I just kind of tore that. And then I let that dry. And then I did not Mod Podge over the top as you do sometimes, but this time I didn't need to. Once that was dry, I took out my black Stays On ink and the stamp that I just purchased of those cute little birds. And these are a good size stamp. Oftentimes when I go to buy them, I find that they're only like 2 or 3 inches, but this one here was a pretty decent size for what I was looking for. And so I just went ahead. I'm running out of ink here, but I'm trying to apply this as liberally as I can. And make sure that you wipe off the smudges if you get any on that outside clear mat. Otherwise, that will also show up on your project. And then just flip it over, rub it very gently so that you don't wiggle the stamp, but firmly enough to adhere the ink to your project. And I like to just hold it with one hand and go ahead and move down the project up and down until I get every area of it pretty good and press down. And then just pull that away, and that is done. And I think that came out adorable. Put the frame back together, and then I wanted to pull some of that black out onto the white frame. So I was going to take the ink and just go around with the ink, but I decided to use the black chalked paint since I had it out, and since I'm running low on that ink, and it's easier to control with a paintbrush for me really than just using the ink pad, but either way would work. And if it was a black paint underneath the white frame, I also could have just sanded it down to black, but this is a wooden frame, so I wanted it to have black distressing instead. So I just went ahead and hit that here and there to give that the look I was going for. Now I could have put a light coat of antiquing wax all over this whole piece if if I wanted to, but I opted not to. I like the way it came out just like that. And so that is the first of 3 projects using this stamp. The second is this new basket I got as part of the 15 baskets for $15 that I picked up. And I just pulled out a piece of drop cloth. Now, you have seen me do this before. I like to fray the edges, and I am using a sepia or brownish color ink on the same stamp, and I am just going to go ahead and stamp directly onto the drop cloth. And you can do this on many different kinds of fabric. I just like the look of it on drop cloth. And I have a lot of drop cloth hanging around. So again, you want to press a little more firmly, I think, on fabric than on paper. It takes a little bit more effort to make sure you get that. But this brown color ink really works well. And I love the way this one came out. This is just so beautiful. And I just lightly touch the four edges of the fabric with glue to adhere this fabric to the basket. There's no need to overdo. I have seen some other crafters adhere fabric to baskets and they put a ton of glue. And I personally think you're better off with less glue, less bubbles, less bumps. And also, obviously, in the future, if you decided you wanted to do something else, you could take that off. And to get glue off a basket, you just need to heat it with your heat gun or your blow dryer. And here it is on my barn door in my kitchen, and I am in love with the way this basket came out. So simple, yet so beautiful. Little hang tag, little bit of greenery, and that is just beautiful. Again, I think I might end up keeping this, at least for a little while. And then here it is in the corner with the other two pieces that I just finished. They all go very nicely together. But I think I'm going to hang it on the clock for a while now and just leave it there since I have a wreath on my barn door. So that is number 2. And then here is a third way to use that same stamp, this time on the piece of wood, which happened to be the drawer front from my old kitchen cabinets. I had hung on to a couple of these, and I decided to go ahead and give that 2 coats of a linen white chalked paint. And then once that was completely dry, I took, instead of a wet distress, this time I took a sanding block and I sand over on the hard edges so that I can bring out some of that wood back into, to the forefront. And that gives it a little bit more dimension. And also I like to smooth over the whole thing just to kind of flatten out the paint and give it a nice smooth finish, because this piece, this eventually will have to be polyurethaned if I'm going to keep it for any length of time, because if you don't finish it either with wax or poly, water can reactivate the chalk paint, and then you'll lose your image. So that is something that you would do if you wanted it to be very permanent. If you don't, then it'll last for a bit. And if you wanted, you could just wash the whole thing off and start all over with that piece of wood and do a whole nother project later on. This time I'm using Midnight Blue ink. And again, the same bird stamp. And I am doing the same thing that I did both on the fabric as well as on the tissue paper, but this time I'm doing it directly on the painted wood. And I am going to use this same stamp twice. Now remember, you could do an entire line of birds. You could cover a bird with a piece of tape, or the florals with a piece of tape, and only use one bird. You can do different things with these stamps. You don't have to use it exactly like it is. But with this idea, I actually wanted 4 birds, because I had this stick that had fallen out of a wreath, and I thought that would be perfect to make it look like these birds are on this branch. So using that little hole where the knob was on the drawer front of my cabinet, I stuck the branch, and then I added a couple of little branches from some eucalyptus or something that I had purchased, I think at Hobby Lobby. I just clipped off a couple of little pieces of that. And then the first one I held really good for a full minute. just to make sure that the branch as well as the greenery would be adhered. And then I just added a little tiny bit to the top and then another branch to the bottom to make this look more like an actual tree branch. And that is all I did with this. There are so many things you can do. I mean, I have 5 more ideas, but I just thought today, just to get out a video for everybody before the 4th, because I do have a little 4th of July thing at the end, that I wanted to just get that done. But man, there are so many things I could have done with this. And here it is in my kitchen with many other blue and white items that I have put together this year. And I think that it is absolutely adorable. And that takes me on to my final 4th of July little trash to treasure. And I know it's tomorrow. I didn't have much time to pull it together. But I had this cloth, what do you call it, placemat. And I had cut up a couple of them in the past. And I thought, how cute would these be as little primitive country flags for the 4th of July. And so all I did was just go ahead and take some skewers, some wooden skewers that I had gotten from the dollar store, and cut the fabric, leaving the edges that were already together, sewn together, and just glued the other 2 edges. And then I went ahead and took some blue ribbon with white stars that I believe I got at Michael's. Maybe, I'm not certain where I got this. I've had it in my stash for quite some time. Now, it was wired, so I just cut the wire off of the back of the sides of that, and then just went ahead and glued on. And then I went and glue, roll a little bit of the edging onto the skewer to get that to, and do not burn yourself. I should be wearing those little silicone finger thingies that I do have. And so be very careful with your hot glue gun. It can be painful. And so I just very gently went ahead and rolled that until I had that cute little flag. And I repeated the same thing again and again until I had 3, because as we all know, 3 is wonderful. We love to decorate in 3 whenever we decorate with anything. And so I could have made 20 of them. I had plenty, but just to get this out and have it done, and for the idea that I had in mind for my little vignette, 3 was sufficient. And so I pulled that together and absolutely love the way that this came out. I was having a lot of fun going around my house, seeing if I had anything that was in any way, shape, or form 4th of July related. So I hope that you enjoy your family and friends this 4th of July. Please leave me a comment. Let me know which of these items were your favorite, and I will see you in the next one. Thanks for stopping by. Take care.